Hey there everyone, this is Sunanda and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to study A Letter to God. This is the first chapter from the book First Flight for Ncert class 10. So let's begin. We will start with the summary of the chapter. The story depicts the unwavering faith of a farmer in God. So over here in the story we will get to know about a farmer who had an unwavering faith on God. That means he had enormous trust on God and his wills, and his faith could not be shaken in by any cause. Okay. It begins with a farmer named Lencho expecting for a rain shower to nourish his field of corn. So here we get to know about a farmer. His name is Lencho and he had a field of corn and he was expecting a good shower of rain. Why? So that his crops could get enough nourishment and this would eventually lead him to earn a lot of profit. Lencho lived on the only house that was on the top of the hill. So he lived on the only house which was situated on the top of the hill, and this hill was low heighted. So it was a small hill over there. It was kind of a valley where his house was situated. Okay, and he owned a cornfield. Lencho was confident that harvest would reap great profits, thus was gazing at the sky in northeast direction for a drizzle. So this fellow, this Lencho, he was very confident about the rain. He knew a good shower would surely come and this would nourish his crops, and obviously this would lead to enormous amount of earning profit. And that is why he was gazing at the northeast direction, because from there the drizzle or the rain was supposed to come. Lencho was happy and confident about the rain, cause these raindrops would ensure a good crop and would eventually get them lots of money. So he was very happy and he was very confident that soon there is going to be a shower, and after that his crops will be nourished and this would eventually lead them to help them to earn a lot of profit. Okay, because the more is the harvest, the more is the profit for the farmer. Unexpectedly, strong winds started blowing, leading to hailstorm. But what happened? All these expectations were ruined. Why? Because suddenly, all of a sudden, unexpectedly, a strong wind started blowing, and that led to hailstorm. What is a hailstorm? It means falling of snow or ice from the sky. That is small balls or lumps of ice when they fall from sky instead of rain. That is called hailstorm, and usually they cover the entire place where they fall, and they usually destroy the crops. Okay, so this is very dangerous for the farmers because it's going to destroy their crop completely. So hailstorm was not a good news for Lencho. Satirically, the writer refers to this pellet of frozen rain as new silver coin. So now the writer of the story is making fun of the situation. He is ridiculing the situation. What is the situation? Lencho, the farmer who was expecting a good rain for his harvest, so that his harvest could be enormous when his crops would be nourished properly after the heavy shower, and which would eventually lead him to earn a lot of profit. This was his expectation, and his expectation was absolutely ruined by what? By the sudden arrival of the hailstorm. So the writer is sarcastically or satirically presenting this situation, and he's referring to this hailstorm or these pallets of frozen ice with what? With new silver coins. Why new silver coins? Now silver coins are whitish in color, and so is the snow, and that is why when the entire cornfield and everywhere which was filled with this hailstorm, it was looking like new silver coins all over, scattered all over. So the writer is satirically presenting the situation that the farmer had expected something and things went to some other direction. His all expectations were ruined by this sudden hailstorm. The farmer now started worrying and hoped for the storm to get over fast. Now, obviously, for a farmer who knew that a hailstorm could ruin his crop, he would obviously hope that he is obviously going to get worried about the situation, and he's hoping desperately that it would get over as fast as possible. But to his utmost disappointment, it didn't. But it did not stop. Okay, it continued. So he was hoping, Lencho was hoping that it stopped sooner, but it didn't stop. It continued for more hours. The hailstorm covered the entire valley, including house, garden and cornfield. So obviously when you have heavy amount of hailstorm happening, obviously the entire valley, the houses, the gardens, the cornfield, everything was covered in snow. Okay, the hailstorm covered the entire valley, including house, garden and cornfield. Not a leaf remained on the tree. So all the leaves that were there on the tree, they all shedded. Okay, they all fell because of this storm. The corn was totally destroyed. Obviously, as I said, that hailstorms are very dangerous for any kind of crops, and it usually destroys crops. So did over here also it happened. The corns were totally destroyed. Lencho became stressed and disappointed as everything went against the plan. So now obviously, as a farmer, any farmer, this is a very sad situation for any farmer when his crops gets destroyed. Lencho had high expectation from the crops. He thought there will be a good shower, and after that his crops are going to grow in would get nourishment and would harvest enormously, and obviously this was eventually going to get him lot of profit. This was his expectation from his cornfield, but the opposite happened. It completely got destroyed after this hailstorm, and now he is worried and he is stressed about how to deal with this situation. He felt helpless. Obviously, a farmer who has invested so much into the field, when he sees that his crops are completely destroyed, he will feel helpless. And there were no corn left, and he feared that they might have to starve this time. Obviously, if your corns, if your whatever you are growing in your field, if that gets destroyed, then obviously you will not be able to sell it, and if you can't sell it, you will not have any profit or income, and if this doesn't happen, then obviously they have to starve. So that is why he became helpless and worried that he feared that they might have to starve this time, because they will have no food to eat. If they can't earn from the corn, they won't be able to feed themselves. That is what made Lencho worried, and this is the main cause of worry and distress for every farmer. Okay. Lencho thus spent the whole night thinking and decided to seek help from God. So as we knew in the first line of this chapter, that he was a person who had great faith, unwavering faith on God. Okay, Lencho had great faith on God. So this man, he spent sleepless nights, and the whole night he thought about the same thing, that what is going to do to come out of this situation. And lastly, he decided that he is going to write a letter to God, okay, and seek for help, because he felt that God was the ultimate person who could actually help him and take him out of this situation, because he knew that in future they are going to starve because their corn were totally destroyed. Okay, he had immense faith on God, and that is why after thinking for the entire night, he decided that he is going to write a letter to God to seek help from him. Lencho thus wrote a letter to God conveying his grievances. In his letter, he mentioned that he needed 100 pesos to regenerate the crops and survive. So, obviously, the next day when he woke up, he wrote a letter to the God, and what he wrote in the letter, he wrote that he immediately needed 100 pesos. Why? Because his crops were completely damaged and he will have no earning, and if he needs to feed his family, he desperately needs to survive. He needs to feed his family, and for that he needed this amount of money desperately, which God is supposed to send him and help him with that. Okay, so he expected that God would send him 100 pesos, which will help him to get out of this complicated situation, and that is why he wrote a letter to God asking him to send him 100 pesos. Okay, so that is what he wanted from God, that he said that God should send him 100 pesos. With that, what he will do, he will regenerate the crop. That means he is going to again start harvesting, and after that he is going to again do the he's going to sell it, and he's going to earn something, or so that they don't have to starve. Okay, he wanted to survive. At the same time, he wanted to grow crops which would be not possible without money, and he needed 100 peso for that, and he expected God would send that money to him. That is why he wrote a letter to God conveying all his grievances, that all he has gone through, and what he wanted as a remedy. Okay. On the envelope, he wrote to God and dropped it in the mailbox. So after he wrote the letter, he wrote about the grievances, he wrote about what he wanted from God, and he wrote on the envelope, he wrote to the God, and he dropped it in the mailbox in post office. A postman noticed it. Obviously, when you write a letter to God, it is a thing that is going to be noticed by others. So the postman who was nearby, he noticed the thing, and he took it to the postmaster. So now he took that letter to the postmaster. Initially, they all laughed at it. Okay, obviously when someone is writing a letter to God, it is something to be laughed at. Okay, obviously you cannot write letter to a God. our letter is not never going to reach to a god. We can pray to god, but we cannot send letter to god. This is ridiculous. But this man has done something like this. And why he has done this? Because he has immense faith on god, and out of his faith he has written this letter to addressing it to god. Okay, he doesn't believe that it's not going to reach to god ever. Okay, because we cannot send letter to gods, but out of his belief that god is there and god is going to surely help him out of the situation, that is why because of his unwavering faith in god, he wrote this letter to god. And obviously when a postman noticed the thing, he took out that letter from the mailbox and took it to the postmaster, and they all had a laugh together, because this was something impossible. Okay, you can never send a letter to god, so this was something impossible. That is why they all laughed at it. But later, the postmaster and the other employees decided to collect money and help the poor farmer. But this postmaster was of a generous kind. He realized the situation. He realized the pain of Lencho. He realized that what he has gone through. He has invested so much of time, money, labor on the harvest of corn, but because of this hailstorm it was completely destroyed, and his life is and his hopes were also crushed, and they need to have to starve after this, because if they don't earn from the cornfield, they will have to starve. The family has to starve. So this all made the postmaster think about the matter seriously, and he decided along with other staffs of the post office that they are going to help this poor man. Okay, so whenever we ask for help, we ask for help from god. God cannot himself come and help us. He sends others to help us. Okay, god will never directly come to us and help us in difficult times. He will send somebody else to come and help us. Over here as well, that happened. God did not come down to help Lencho. He made the postmaster and the employees of the post office come together and help this poor man. Okay, so despite his efforts, postmaster could collect only 70 pesos. So they decided, these people, this postmaster and the employees of the post office, they decided to collect money and send it to Lencho, but they failed to collect 100 pesos. They could only collect 70 pesos. Okay, so the amount which was demanded by Lencho was not been able to means they could not collect that entire amount. Okay, they only could collect 70 pesos. And then what did the postmaster decide? He decided that he sent it to Lencho along with the letter with undersigned by God. So now what he did, after putting 70 pesos that he has been able to collect in his office, he put it in an envelope, and he sent it to Lencho, and he and with a letter, and in the letter he has signed it in the name of God. Means he has sent the letter in a way as if Lencho would think that God has only sent him the 70 pesos. Okay, he will never know that this is the work of postmaster and his team, who have felt pity for Lencho, and they decided to help him. But he would think that God has directly sent him 70 pesos. Okay, so they didn't wanted to shake or break the faith of Lencho. Postmaster and the team, they realized that Lencho had unwavering faith on God, and he believed that God himself will help him, and they didn't wanted to break this faith of his on God. And that is why they wrote that God has sent the money to Lencho. They didn't say that they have collected and given it to him. Okay, next Sunday, Lencho came to post office for the reply. Obviously, he has written a letter to God, and he has put it in the mailbox. Obviously, the next Sunday he expected a reply from God, and so he came quickly to the post office to find a reply. The postmaster handed him the letter, waiting to see him joyful and satisfied. Obviously, the postmaster he knew the entire thing, and he wanted to see the reaction on the face of Lencho when he receives the money, and that is why he handed over the letter to Lencho, okay, and waited to see his reactions. Okay, on the contrary, Lencho was disheartened on seeing less money. But what he found, the postmaster was expecting Lencho to be very happy with the money that he receives. But what happened? The opposite happened. Lencho was dissatisfied. Why? Because the money was less. He demanded 100 pesos, but there was only 70 pesos. So he was not happy. He was disheartened to see it. So his reaction was not as expected by postman. The postman had expected he would be very happy and joyous and satisfied after receiving the money, but the opposite happened. Lencho was dissatisfied and disheartened. Why? Because the money was less. Because we already know that the postmaster and the employees, in spite of trying hard, they could not collect more than 70 pesos. and that is what they had given it to Lencho to help him. His faith still intact, believed God could not make mistake. Now this Lencho, he had, as we all know, he had an unwavering faith on God, and it was still intact. After receiving less money, it was still intact, and he thought in his mind that God cannot make mistakes. So he thought that God hasn't made mistake, he cannot make mistake. He had sent me 100 peso. There must be something wrong with this people over here. They must have done something. So he doubted the sincerity of the post office employees. Okay, his faith in God was still intact. He did not believe that God could send him less. In spite of him asking 100 peso, he cannot send him less money. So he thought that God cannot make mistake. The mistake must have been done by these post office employees. On being disappointed, he wrote another letter to God. Now, as we all know that in spite of getting less money, he was disheartened and was not happy about it. But his faith in God was intact, and he thought God cannot make mistakes. So he decided that he will write another letter to God. And what he wrote in that letter? He wrote, the postmaster, what he did, he wrote a letter to the God and dropped it again in the mailbox. Okay. Now the postmaster took it out. Obviously, he was curious to see what he has written in the letter. Lencho complained that he had received only 70 pesos. Now, in this letter, he has written a complaint that I have only received 70 pesos and I needed the remaining amount desperately. So he now says that I have received only 70 pesos, but I need the entire 100 pesos. Why? Because I need that amount desperately. I need it for reharvesting, regenerating my crops, as well as to save my family from starvation. Okay. So he complained that he received less. Lencho doubted the integrity and honesty of post office employees. Now he doubted, in his letter he mentioned that he doubted the sincerity and integrity of the employees of the post office. Okay, and suggested that money should not be sent via post. So he suggested God that please don't send me money through post anymore. Okay, why? Because these employees were not honest. Because he doubted the missing amount must have been stolen by the post office employees. So he doubted that the missing amount, that means the 100 peso, he believed it that God had sent him 100 pesos, but this employees of the post office or the staffs of the post office, they might have stolen the rest money and gave him only 70 pesos. So they were dishonest men, and that is why he suggested God that please next time when you send me the remaining amount, don't send it via post, send me directly. So have you understood the story? This is a beautiful story where a poor peasant farmer Lencho, who had high expectation from his cornfield, that there would be a good shower and then he will have a huge harvest out of, and eventually he will earn large profit. But all his desires and hopes were crushed with a strong storm, after which his crops were completely destroyed and he was disheartened and he was stressed. And after thinking a whole night, he decided that only God, on whom he had an unwavering faith, could only help him out in this situation. And he decided to write a letter to God, okay, in which he wrote about his grievances, that what had happened with him, and he demanded for 100 pesos, okay, and he dropped it in the mailbox, writing to God on the envelope. And this writing a letter and dropping it in the mailbox, this was all noticed by one of the staff of post office, one of the postman in the post office, and he took it out from the mailbox and took it to the postmaster. So postmaster, after reading the letter, they first laughed at the situation, because obviously you cannot write a letter to God and God is not going to receive the letter, nor is going to respond you directly, right? We cannot write letters to God. So that is why they laughed at it. But after that, this postmaster felt sorry for this poor Lencho, because his condition was really miserable. His crops were destroyed, he is going to starve now, he has no money, he is asking for help from God. And they were mostly impressed, the postmaster as well as his staff was impressed most because of the faith that Lencho has showed on God. This letter that he has written, this was actually a depiction of his immense faith on God, okay, his unwavering faith on God. That was been totally portrayed in this letter, that he has so much faith on God that he believed that this letter would reach God and God is going to read the letter and help him. So that is why this postmaster decided to help poor Lencho out of this situation, and he and his team, they collected money to help. but they could not, in spite of all their efforts, they were unable to collect the entire money. They could hardly collect the 70 pesos. And when they handed over this money to Lencho thought this was sent by God, and he also believed, and he was disheartened that the entire amount that he had demanded was not given to him. But still, in spite of all this, his faith on God was intact, and he believed that God can never make mistake. This mistake was done by the post office employees. They must have stolen his remaining amount, and that is why he wrote another letter to God, telling him or complaining him about the situation that he hasn't received the entire amount, and he doubted the honesty and integrity of the post office employees. And he also suggested God that please don't send the money through post, send it directly to me, because these people are stealing the money. Okay, so now this particular story is a beautiful depiction of the faith faith of farmer on God, and which was immense and unwavering. So I hope you have understood this chapter. I have tried to discuss this chapter in as detail as possible. In case you have any doubt regarding this chapter, do let me know in the comment section. Keep watching my videos, and till then, bye bye, and please don't forget to share, subscribe and like my channel. Thank you.